Okay, class, today we're going to work on radicals. So I know that if I have the square root of 63, that I'm going to have to do a factor tree. So I know that's going to give me a 3 times a 21. I'm going to circle that because it's prime. And then a 3 times a 7. And I'm going to circle both of those because they're prime. So what I really have is the square root of a 3 times a 3 times a 7. So I know that that's going to give me a 3 square root of 7. Now remember, that's because I have a square root, and so I have a group of 3's here, so my 3 comes on the outside. Now for this second one here, I have a 3, and then if I do the prime factorization for my 12, I'm going to get a 2 times a 2 times a 3. So when I bring that group of 2's out, I'm going to have a 3, and then the 2 I brought out, and then a 3. And that's going to give me a 6 square root of 3. Remember to pause your videos if you have questions, but I'm going to go on to the next one, or if you need time to write it down. So when I go to example 3, I'm going to write everything out. Remember, I say, when in doubt, write it out. So for my visual learners, I know that if I do the prime factorization of my 9, I'm going to get a 3 times a 3. And then I have 4 x's. And then I have 10 y's. And then I have 4 z's. And remember, because I'm under the square root, it does, again, take me 2 to bring out. So it's 2 for a group. So I have a group of 3's, a group of x, a group of x, a group of y, a group of y, group of z, group of z. So if I look at my groups that I'm going to bring out from under the radical, I'm going to end up having a 3, 2 x's, 5 y's, and 2 z's. Remember, when in doubt, write it out. So now let's move on to multiplying radicals. Remember to just pause your video if you needed more time to write that. So I'm going to go on to example 4. So I know that I have a 2 that's on the outside. Well, I know that my 8, a squared, and then my 4, and then my 18, a squared. So I know I'm going to multiply my 2 times my 4. And then when I multiply what's under my radical, I'm going to end up with 144 and 8 to the 4th. So that's going to give me 8 on the outside. Well, I know the square root of 144 is 12, so I'm going to end up bringing my 12 out. And I know I have 2 groups of a's there. So when I multiply that out, I'm going to get 96 and then a squared. Any questions? Make sure you jot them down and ask me in class. So now let's go on to example 5. So for example 5, it's telling me to rationalize the denominator. I know that's a new concept to you. So what I'm going to do is I need to remember that I can never have a radical in my denominator. So I'm going to have to get rid of the radical in my denominator. Now, we do know that if I were to take a square root of 6 and multiply it by a square root of 6, I would get a square root of 36, which would just give me a 6, correct? So based on that, what do I know that I can multiply any number by and not lose that value? That's correct, a 1. So if I take 3 square root of 2 over square root of 6, and because I want to get rid of that square root of 6, I know I can multiply it by the square root of 6, but in order not to use the value of this whole term, I'm going to put a square root of 6 here. Because what is the square root of 6 over the square root of 6? That's correct, 1. So when I multiply across, I end up with 3 square root of 12 over the square root of 36. And we know that what that really is 3. And then I'm going to have the square root of 4 times 3 over 6, correct? So what do I know about that 4. That's square root of 4. Trying to get this out the way here. It's not allowing me. Okay. So I know that with my square root of 4, that's really a 2, right? So that's going to be 3 times 2 square root of 3 over 6. So that's going to give me 6 square root of 3 over 6. So my 6's become 1, and I'm left with the square root of 3. Remember to take a moment and write that out if you need to. Okay, let's take a moment and look at example 6. As we see here, they really worked example 6 out for us, but I really want to go over it with you to make sure you understand where they came up with that product. So I know that they took 3 and 4 and multiplied it to get this 12. And then they multiplied the 2 times the 12 to give me my 24. And then based on the power rules that we went over, I know x to the third and x to the third is really 6x's. And y to the fifth and y to the third is really y to the 8th. So now that we understand this, let's talk about how we go from this term to this term. So remember I said if you're in doubt, write it out. So if you were to write that out, I know I would have a 12, and then under here, I would have a 4 times 6. Yes, I could have broken it down into the prime factorization, but I left it as 4 and 6 because I know that the square root of 4 is what? That's correct too. So I know I can bring that out of the radical. And then I know that I can bring so many of my x's and so many of my y's out. So I know, like I said, you write it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, I got a little happy there. I should only have 6 of those. So. But then when it comes to my y's, that's what I have 8 of. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Make sure that one looks like an X. So when I bring my 2 out, I have 12, and then I got to bring that 2 out, which is the square root of 4. And then there's nothing I can do with that 6, so that 6 is going to stay up under my radical. Then I'm going to look at how many sets of x's I can bring out, and there's 3 of them. And then how many sets of y's I can bring out, and there's 4 of them. So my answer when I multiply my 12 times my 2 is 24, x to the third, y to the fourth, square root of 6. Okay, let's take a moment and look at example 7. Remember, pause your video if you need more time to write that down. So now let's go to example 7. So for example 7, I have raising a radical to a power. One of the ways I tell people to look at that is that means stamp it twice. I have 2 of those terms. So that really means I have a 3 square root of 3x twice. Right, so it really means I'm really multiplying both of those terms. So when I do that, I'm going to end up with the 9 square root of 9x. But how many x's is that? That's correct, it's squared. So I have a 9, and what do we know the square root of 9 is? A 3, so I'm going to bring that 3 out. And what's the square root of x squared? It would be an x. So I know I will be left with 27x. Okay, so that concludes that videos over radical. So make sure that you pause what you need to, write down any questions you have so that we can go over in class. Have a good day.